Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, ladies and gentlemen. We have had an interactive session, the book launch here in Nairobi, starting from 3 p.m. Kenyan time. And now we are transitioning into the online session. And as we promised for the online session, our keynote speaker, Professor Washington Yotto Ochieng, is joining us from Imperial College London. Is the head of the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. And we would like to give him this first chance to talk to us about geomatics generally and his impression on the prospects of geomatics for the future of this geodata-driven digital revolution and living in a hyper-connected world. So, Professor, I have the pleasure of welcoming you to speak to the audience, online audience here, and the in-person audience here at Western Hotel in Nairobi. So the chance is now yours. It is my honor to welcome you to speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nashan. I am delighted to be here. And particularly so, given the occasion. So let me just say a few words about the occasion itself before I say some general words about the discipline and its relevance as I see it today and tomorrow. I was looking at the book and its kind of project orientation, and felt that it is addressing an issue which to me is fundamental in the sense that we are in the business in geomatics, geospatial engineering science and so on, in actually changing the world and changing the world for the better. So in the past I've spoken about the discipline as underpinning life as we know it, almost at the same level as the air that we breathe. So I'm very, very passionate in making sure that that particular message is received across the various demographics of our society, including in government, policymaking, industry, academia, and so on. So the actual project dimension to the book is something to be appreciated and lauded. And so what I wanted to do is to thank you, Nashan, and your co-authors on, bringing us a book that actually links what we do in the classroom, what we do in research to practice. So many, many congratulations. And I've read the book and I do recommend it globally. So let me say a few words really about the discipline. And also just to say that I am to some extent a little bit disappointed by generations gone by in the sense of empowerment. I call it youth empowerment. And because of that, I have got hope and great hope in empowering the current youth, those within and without the discipline of geomatics. Now, just a short story, which is that I have been involved around the world, not least in the United Kingdom, in geomatics and beyond, including space strategies and so on. And even in the United Kingdom today, there is something called the Geospatial Commission that is set up by the UK government to coordinate cross-governmental aspects of geospatial data or geomatics data. And for the reason that there is a realization that human continuity and planetary security and resilience actually depends very much on it. And so there are questions like, if we're increasingly automating, operating in a hyper-complex, connected world based on sensing data and so on, These are what we call mission critical applications, such as driverless cars being on our roads and so on. What is the role of geomatics, and what is the role of spatiotemporal and derivative information in this world? So the simple answer is, it is a showstopper if we don't deal with it properly, if we don't make sure that situational awareness, for example, is underpinned by the necessary data and so on, we achieve levels of security, safety, and so on with this information. Most of that automation, most of that interconnectedness and hypercomplexity will not happen. So I just want to say that for anybody who is struggling to understand the role and relevance of geomatics to life, you just have to look at the trend of where the world is going. And I think it's very interesting to look at it also from the Sustainable Development Goals. So one of the questions you want to ask yourself is, what is the role of geomatics in delivering each and every one of those United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? And you come to the conclusion that it is pivotal in every aspect. So I just want to thank you again, Nashin, and your co-authors for doing the world a great job in trying to bring even further into the open the role of geomatics in everyday life. So thank you very much indeed. And I hope that you are celebrating pretty well, you have a good day, and that people get to read that book, which is quite important in my view. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Professor. I don't know if you have 1 or 2 minutes to answer a few questions from the audience.
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay, so here you have talked about empowering the youth, and in the book we try to do that. If you look at the authors, it is also in the order of seniority, where the last author there, Derek Comey, is a young surveyor who just graduated in the year 2013. And here in Kenya, there is this outcry about how the youth can be actively engaged in the marketplace. How is it in the UK? And when we are talking about the future of work and interdisciplinary collaboration, would you recommend that they just continue going for further education, master's, PhD, so that they can be meaningfully engaged on? And what of TVET? What is your broad view on the matter, and even the in-depth view, both the sublime and the subtle? Thank you.
It's excellent. One interesting observation that I see is that in the United Kingdom, and to some extent the leading nations that over the years have provided training at different levels in geomatics areas of, as you call them, geodesy, photogrammetry, and so on, surveying, that particularly at university levels, those particular courses, the particular programs have disappeared, or actually are disappearing. And some people call me to say, does that mean that that is the end of geomatics as we know it, and so on? And it is not. The interesting thing now is that because of the fact that geomatics is embedded in the entire value chain, so if you take, for example, supply chain, you take transport and so on, it's almost taken as a given that within that chain, within that overall acquisition cycle, is that you would expect there to be spatiotemporal information and derivatives that are coming directly from geomatics and so on. So what I'm trying to suggest is that we are no longer going to be just basic suppliers of geomatics data and so on, but we also need to understand the value chain. And that's probably the best way to develop as we move forward. So I encourage, universities, tertiary education, technical institutes, and so on, to embrace more the consideration of development of expertise in understanding the areas of application and the value chain. And what that does is that it makes you a better, much more impactful geomatics engineer or geospatial engineer and so on. So we need to expand the way that we train. We need to ensure that we're not just developing people who generate positioning, navigation, timing, equipment or surveying theodolites and total stations and so on, but people who understand how they are used in the various areas of application. It's very important that we do that. We are doing that at Imperial College London, and we're producing doctors and master's students and Master of Engineering bachelor students in areas such as, traffic management and control, understanding the wider thing, but actually their expertise in how you use positioning, navigation, and timing in that chain. So I think we just need to be a bit more, get a little closer to the actual applications and understanding the value chain to realize how important geomatics is to the world. So don't see the demise, if you like, of geomatics specific programs on as a demise of the discipline. Really, it's a reflection of the fact that people are realizing that the discipline is now embedded squarely within the value chain of almost all areas of life.
Thank you. Very well answered. And because the professor has limited time with us, I'll only accept one more question from the online audience. One more question, then we'll allow the professor to leave at his own pleasure, and then we shall continue as co-authors of this book to present on it, the overview. So Eddie Olo, you have a question. Can you unmute and ask your question?
Hello guys, hello Professor Washington. You're speaking to Eddie Olo from the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. I think we have a problem on the professional body and registration of geomatics engineers in Kenya. Because partly some of us think we need to be registered with the Engineers Board of Kenya here in Kenya. And some others think that we should be registered with the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. The Institution of Surveyors of Kenya brings about all the landed professionals, while the Engineers Board of Kenya brings about the civil engineers, mechanical engineers, and the electrical engineers, and so on and so forth. But then I think the kind of work that we do, somehow, depending on your specialization, one could lean towards the engineering aspects of the profession. Kindly expound on that, Professor.
It's Eddie, thank you very much indeed. It's something we have grappled with also in the United Kingdom over the years. So let me tell you the story of the UK. So obviously you've got the RICS, the RICS, very old body, alongside the Institution of Civil Engineers and so on. And people like myself who were involved in this debate. So you would know that in the UK, we ended up with another body called the Chartered Institution of Civil Engineering and Surveyors. But also, alongside that, as I say, we have institutions of Chartered Highways and Transportation. We got the Institute of Structural Engineers and so on. So what we have done in the UK, therefore, is that there are professional bodies that are able to account for the different facets, let's say, of surveying and geomatics, depending on the area of interest. But my own story, is that I became chartered engineer through this Institution of Civil Engineers. That's how I became chartered, but we get chartered by something called the Engineering Council of the UK. So we have that kind of selection. And my view is that it should be the same in Kenya, in a sense that on the one hand, you've got the ISK, and on the other hand, you got the IEK. So there should be, if you like, an engineering chapter that would take in geomaticians and surveyors and so on, interested in the art of engineering per se, and those should be able to go through the IEK. The same with people who are interested in things like cadastral surveying and so on, they should be able to go through the ISK. What we are very clear about in the UK is that whichever way you go, whether it's through the RICS, whether it's through the civil engineering surveyors, whether it's through the ICE and so on, we are classified as engineers. We are all engineers. So that's how we deal with it. I've got some connections to the IEK. If they're not doing that, then I think that's a debate that needs to be opened up to be able to, for them to realize, if they don't, that there's a natural home. The IEK is a natural home of the geomatician who has an interest in using their expertise, their considerable expertise in engineering. I don't know whether that helps you, Eddie. Does that help you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now, I can see two hands, and I'm quite happy to take those two, and then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll give this chance to Boniface Osoro, who has been my mentee. He was also in the UK.
I know Boniface. I know Boniface.
Yeah,
I know
so
him.
I'll give this chance to Boniface Osoro. Ask your question in a very precise and concise manner, like a surveyor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nasham. Thank you very much, Professor. Mine is not a question, but just to seek your opinion on, do you think that the advent of AI is likely to increase the uptake of geospatial data products? That is one. Then two, what are your comments regarding the increase in the number of geospatial instruments, especially satellites for African countries? Do you think that we need to have synergy between our upcoming agencies to produce instruments that will give us unique data products rather than just duplicating missions that are already outside there? Thank you.
Yeah, excellent questions, Boniface. Good to see you. The first question is definitely yes. Why? AI is human beings trying to reflect how life works. That's what AI, that's why it's called artificial intelligence. And so to me, it's surprising people think it's such a great thing. If we are able to mimic how life works, then I would say you're closer to solving a lot of problems. And a lot of those things are going to be data driven. And as I said, geospatial or spatial temporal information is critical to that. So you're talking bigger than big data, it's heterodox and so on, machine learning, AI, and all that kind of stuff. Without geomatics, that's all going to fall on its head. So the answer is yes. And that's why I was saying that if you think about life and the trends and automation, data centricity, and all this kind of stuff, that is actually giving geomaticians more work to do. So it's not actually a demise, as people think, by these particular programs being scaled down. It's recognizing the fact that it's part of a chain, so it's embedded. And so there is a lot more for us to do. What we need to recognize is that there's no more space for, the geomatician or the geospatial scientist or engineer without considering the value chain. That's what I'm trying to say. So we need to expand our education to recognize that we are now a part of something bigger, right? And that we are also instrumental in the future of the planet. We have always been, but we are much more now. As to the second question, I gave a lecture, a keynote lecture at Kenyatta University a few years ago, where the lecture was about how how Africa can actually benefit from space today, because sometimes when we have these developing countries looking at space thinking that's the preserve of others. Now we have Nigeria and so on doing stuff. Kenya has now created its own space agency. So there is stuff we can do today to actually exploit the different tech that there is in the world today, including space. And I do recommend that the youth, particularly, and the training programs that we have at universities should recognize the fact that we don't have to build satellites in Africa to be able to benefit from space. So that's just an open invitation to make sure that there's a lot we can do in Africa today from platforms that exist in space whose signals are everywhere. So let's do that. Thanks, Boniface. So can I have the two, Derek and Jacob, and then I'll say bye for now.
Thank you, Prof, for gracing our occasion. My name is Derek Kome, co-author with Clement Ogaji Nation And you may or may not know that just last week, the governor of Nairobi was hosted by local TV by Jeff Koinange. And during the interview, he mentioned your name, that you are his advisor regarding how to sort out the traffic mess in Nairobi. And he mentioned that you have sorted out traffic messes or traffic mobility issues in London and many other places in Europe. And therefore, my question was, how did the solutions you offered to those mobility problems bring in the issue of geomatics, and how geomatics was involved in dealing with those problems? Thank you, Prof.
Thanks, Derek, and many congratulations again for penning that book. Excellent work. See, in terms of traffic, it's very, very simple actually. In the sense that if you're going to have traffic, then please get them moving at the design speed. Get them moving. And if you have to do that, then of course you've got to make sure you deal with congestion and things like that. And what I mean by get them moving is that it's spatial, it's temporal. You combine the two, you get speed, direction, and so on. The usual things we talk about in geomatics. So that's what you do. But all of these things are underpinned by something called demand. We need to understand demand in all its forms and variables and so on. Again, in space and time. And then we go into planning, design, testing, and so on. So actually the foundation is demand and being able to then use that for the actual planning and then design and development and operation of the system. So my high-level response is that it is fundamental, including the actual demand, because demand says, where are the people, where are they going? If you hear people talking about OD matrices and travel behavior and so on, if you remove the spatial temporal component, you have nothing. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say. And that is a very good example of people take it for granted. When you wake up in the morning, unless you're going to sit on the sofa the whole day, but even where you are sitting, your doctor may want to know remotely that you're doing some physical activity at home. And how does he know that? It's got to be spatial, temporal, and so forth. So what I'm trying to say a lot more is that people assume, and usually when I examine PhDs that have data, spatial data in them, but people wanting to develop systems like traffic control, they treat the data as error-free. So you ask them, tell me a little about the data. How is this data? What is the errors? What are the error sources, and so on? So that also tells you that there's also, if we are not doing it ourselves, we as geomaticians need to educate the others in terms of the characterization of these data sources. So in my job in London and in my job in the rest of the world with respect to transport, there's a significant component of that comes from my training in geomatics. And it's also a very nice way to make them understand that it's a very important profession. Now, only 2 days ago, I was having a chat with the Geospatial Commission in the UK. And what were we talking about? We were talking about driverless cars-based transportation networks from the perspective of developing the next generation traffic management control for cities like London. Remember, it's the Geospatial Commission, which tells you that without the geospatial component, we are not going very far. The other thing to remember is regulation of these safety critical services. The regulators want proof. So we are also having to work with them because some of the, as I say, the characterization of the performance of these data types and sources also drive the end reliability and confidence in the delivery of a service, however far removed the geospatial component is. So I hope I'm convincing you that this thing is embedded in the entire value chain, and it will also help us to understand the points within that value chain where geomatics is needed. So that's the challenge, the added challenge I'm giving in terms of training. our geomatics experts. Don't train them to generate the data only and then unleash them onto the world to then try to learn the application and the value chain. That's the problem that we have addressed very much in the UK. And that is the reason why, those particular specific programs, let's say undergraduate programs, are disappearing around the world. Jacob.
Yes, thank you, Professor, for having us today. So my question will take a different angle. Okay, so Professor National have told us that you are someone who is interested on youth empowerment. So youth empowerment in terms of education through scholarship and employment opportunities abroad, because some of us here have done with their process of specialization. So they want to know, after this meeting, how are we going to benefit?
By the way, Nation, so let me use the opportunity just to plug something in. If you go to the Imperial College London website and you go to the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and you go to the page on, let's say, postgraduate research, so this is PhD, and you look at the scholarships there, you will see a variety of scholarships. One of them is called the Shauki Saad Scholarship, which is a scholarship for Sub-Saharan Africa, fully funded. All you have to do is to get yourself on an airplane to come here, and everything is paid for. And we launched it this year, and we received a few applications, and we were only able to award just one. There was only one application that we deemed to be at the level we are requiring. So the scholarships are there, my friend.
Okay.
Just look out for them. They're there.
Okay. The scholarship is only for the civil engineering students, because some of us, like me, I have done a degree in Bachelor of Commerce, Business Administration. So what is my fate?
Yeah, but you see, I can't remember the number of universities in the United Kingdom. If you, and then you have, the Chevening scholars, you've got the Commonwealth and all these things. So what I would suggest is, because we are very much global, we have more than, even if you go for the top 20, we call them the Russell universities in the UK, the top 20. If you go to each of their websites, you will see that they do have scholarships. I mean, I went to Nottingham University on an ODA scholarship many, many years ago. So just look out for them. They're there.
So there's no way you can help us to get those opportunities?
Well, the first thing you got to do is write to me, isn't it? And send me a CV and something like that. And then I can advise you accordingly. I also have my own connections, within the UK and beyond. So we can have a discussion on your interests, areas of interest, and maybe I can guide you to places where you're most likely to get help.
Okay, how can I access you?
I'm all over the website. All you have to do is to type my name. You'll find everything you need, including emails and even phone numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Should we leave it there, Nation? And just to say, shout out to Clement. Clement is here.
Yes, he is.
Just
Raja, you are here.
Just to say hello, and also many congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Ochieng. I'm a bit shy in this meeting because I'm actually partially incapacitated. I just came back from Kenya late last week, and to quickly say that, the three of us, the three co-authors, we had never met physically until June 10th last month. Yeah, that was during my trip to Kenya. So anyway, to cut everything, to be a bit brief, just to let you know, I'm actually in bed right now because I broke my collarbone and a rib. Yeah, so I'm actually just trying to recover right now back in Colorado. So thank you so much.
Where are you in Colorado? Is it?
I'm in Denver.
Oh,
Denver is the,
yeah. Denver is my hometown.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Oh, when were you here last time? Are you coming to Ion in September?
No, not this time. Actually, I was only in New York 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
Okay.
So I'm trying to stay on the ground a bit longer this time. But,
all right. Next time, let me know when you come over and we will host you with my family. I actually work in Boulder. Boulder is just a smaller satellite city north of Denver. That's where Noah is.
I know Boulder. So Penina Axelrod is still there, or she's?
Penina, yeah, Penina is in the university. I think she's still there. She's not retired yet. Yeah, okay. I think she's still there, from what I can recall. Yeah, okay. But you know, I'm not in the university myself.
And I know you were Noah and people like that. I remember. Was it?
Yeah, yeah. Correct. Yeah. Thank you so much for your inspiration. You have inspired so many people. You just don't know.
Well done. I do know that Prof. Adul wants you to write another book. I do know that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
Yeah. He reached out to me last year, and I said I'm open to the idea, but you know, we'll see.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Anyway, a very speedy recovery, Clement, and Nashin and Derek. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for doing that good job and ensuring that, you know, there is continuity, at least in terms of the discipline, impactful continuity. So thank you very much, and I wish you very well in the rest of today and always.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Professor. And we'll continue now with the session. So it has been a very good, and I can say grand opening to the online session. Remember, we began at 3 p.m. Kenya time. We are still proceeding now. It is the interactive online session. And I can see we have been joined by quite a number of virtual participants. And if we can wrap up, the professors emphasize that we have to embrace interdisciplinary collaboration and democratization. And talking of data, you know, nowadays we even talk of datafication, because data is driving most of what we use in daily life, work and play. But this data has to be quality controlled. It is not error-free. And that is why geomatics still has a key role to play, and automation, AI and the like are not a death knell to the profession as such, but I can call it a reinvigoration or a resurrection, so that we can take on a new trajectory and impact the world in new and innovative ways. So for the next session, I'm going to take you briefly through this book and the book launch, that is. So I'm going to share my screen. So Boniface, you can let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, Dr.
The full mode or?
Not the presentation mode. If you can have it on presentation mode, we'll appreciate.
Okay, let me try again. I think because we are using two screens, that is the challenge. How is it now on your side?
Still not on presentation mode.
Okay, I think we'll just proceed because we are using two screens from here. On the large screen where the live audience at Western Hotel is, it is in the full mode, but I believe you can see what I'm presenting. So
Yes.
that is the title of the book, and we are three authors, and the three authors will also introduce themselves. I don't need to introduce myself because you can see from the list I'm the second author there from Taita Taveta University. And the title is Project Design for Geomatics Engineers and Surveyors. This is the second edition. And as I told the live audience here, that title took us quite some time to script. And it is like that because not all surveyors are geomatics engineers. Surveying is broad, so we do have valuation surveyors, we do have quantity surveyors, and that is why we came up with that title. And today is the mega book launch. Why do we call it mega? We had a mini one on the 23rd of March this year, but today we are doing it when we already have a good number of copies in Kenya that you can buy. When we did that in March, we still just had the authors' complimentary copies. And you must have seen this poster online. This is what we use to publicize the event. And you're able to scan the QR code and register either for online or in-person participation. And there are many ways of getting this book from Amazon, for example, which is an online store. In Kenya now, it is available on Noria bookstore. Noria, the head office is in the Bazaar Plaza, Moi Avenue. But Noria also does deliveries, and you can do your order, make your order online. So it is also available from our local bookstore, Noria bookstore in Nairobi. And they do deliver all over East Africa. And we say that it was a collaborative project. We worked on it over a period of about 2 years. And Clement, the first author, already told you that we had not met physically before until June the 10th this year. So we use the power of virtual collaboration, and it is a testament to the fact that we can work in a borderless fashion, making use of the power of online connectivity. So these are just some photos here in Kenya. Joe Ageo, I think, is a media personality very well known to us in Kenya and even abroad. And why are we showing that? Because it is not enough to have a product. You also need to make it public. And when you interact with these media personalities, you can extend the reach of your product. And why am I showing that? Because I'm a lecturer at Taita Taveta University and I'm affiliated to the same. So part of the reason why I was able to contribute to this book is because I have a professional home and that is where I work, that is where I've been teaching, and the notes that I've been using have also fed into the material that has pervaded through the book. And we told you that the book is practice oriented, and the keynote speakers also appreciated that. So by getting this book, you'll not just be enthralled by the theory, rather you'll be immersed in the real life applications. And I told the live audience here, for example, page 20 of that book as a real life application of the otherwise dreaded differential calculus, but now digested and delivered in such a way that it can impact on minimizing infrastructure development costs. So I urge you to take this book and also see how it tries to bridge the gap between theory and practice, and how it has made a good attempt at bringing on board local content against international best practices, with chapters on standards and specifications, chapters on developing project proposals, and estimating project costs. For example, what are the overhead costs or indirect costs? What are the fixed costs? And what of these popular contingency that we sometimes place as part of a project proposal? If you have a high percentage as contingency, what would be the impact on the attractiveness of your proposal to potential donor? So this book is good for the classroom and even better for the real world. And that is why we urge you to get a copy of the same. So there we are just showing on Amazon, it is available, and you have to cater for the shipping costs. But today, I'm happy to report that live here at Western Hotel, we have many copies of the book going at a highly discounted price. And the participants who are here have managed to get copies of the same, and you are not too late if you are in need. So the key issues and the key message I've already summarized, and that is the table of contents, how to get the book. Now you can understand, you can get it from Noria bookstore in Kenya. You can also order online from Amazon, or you can get the copies that are already available here with us. And there are some early adopters we want to acknowledge. As early as April this year, we had surveyors such as Surveyor Chris Kinywa getting a copy of the book. And then Clement referred to our first meeting on June the 10th this year. You can see all the three authors here. I'm here, Nation. This is Derek, and this is Clement, and this Surveyor Peter Ndirangu is here with us, exhibiting the practical application of a 3D laser scanner. And then that is just an errata list. So as you go through the pages of the book, where there are some typos, we have acknowledged and we have given you what should have been the correct typing for the same. So we'll be able to distribute this as PDF also to the participants who are here with us, because we have your email addresses. We also have that promotional material that together with this PDF you'll be able to get. For example, we have number one, solutions to selected exercises in this book, which you can use to train students effectively. And number two, the future of Africa in the post-COVID-19 world. This is a 250-page book written by African scholars. It is an edited book, and it was funded during the COVID pandemic by the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. And that is why we are distributing it for free, because it was funded to encourage African scholars to write several chapters and project on the future of Africa from a knowledge perspective post-COVID-19. So this one you'll be able to download from this PDF so that you can have a happy reading. So we'll get feedback from the audience, both physical here and online. But before we go there, I would like to invite my co-authors also to tell us something about their experience and anything they would like to tell the audience so that they can get optimal output from using this book. And I have the pleasure of inviting Derek Koome. And Derek Koome, your challenge is even greater because you have to encourage your peers who are youth that they can be part of international authorship. So Derek, you are welcome to give us your 3 to 5 minutes of comments. Then Clement, as our lead and senior, will wrap it up. Then we'll open it up for the plenary. Thank you.
Thank you, Nation. You can see your screen is still okay. Okay, thank you, Nation. Thank you, Nation, for the introduction. My name is Derek Koome. I am a private surveyor working in Machakos County. That's where my offices are, but as you know, we surveyors, we go everywhere. Sorry, I'm not so used to giving speeches. That's why you can see the vocalized process. But sometimes, when I look at this book, I'm in disbelief that I was one of the authors of a book together, or rather alongside two professors. Because actually I am the only non-professor, non-PhD, non-masters in the authorship. But I guess the two professors saw that I had something in me to add value to the book because of my various experiences in the private sector. Because having graduated in 2013, I did not do any, rather I didn't go work for the government. I worked for a couple of years for a company in South Sea. It is called, the survey is called Benson Kemeo at Nile Surveys, who gave me a lot of experience and gave me the confidence to venture on my own. And therefore, those other 7 to 8 years, I've been on by myself, freelancing and doing jobs all over the country, and sometimes going to countries like South Sudan and Somalia. And therefore, one other thing that I've been able to do that probably could have added value is that I was always very intellectually curious about the goings and outs of surveying. I would rather be curious about what is happening, and I would pen the articles on LinkedIn. And therefore, when I pen the article on LinkedIn, I would look at the engagements from very many people. And that is how I got to meet Clement, because I wrote an article about the coast stations in Africa. And he got quite interested, and he started saying we could collaborate on something. And we collaborated on a project, which is a story for another day. And then after that project was over, he invited me to whether I could consider maybe writing a chapter regarding a subject which I was very curious about at that time, which was drone and UAV surveys, because I'd actually just acquired a drone license from an institution called Drone Space. And I was very, in the wave of wanting to adopt drones in my work. And therefore I got a lot of information, and even that request to author a chapter about UAV surveys got me to read more about it, and therefore to contribute to the chapter. Coming from being the only non-academic among the authorship, I struggled a lot because I was told my language was very flowery, because I am used to writing articles in magazines and on my LinkedIn page. And therefore, my language had to be corrected so that it is more academic. And I want to thank so much to my co-authors, Nation and Clement, for being my big brothers and for helping me along to make sure that the chapter was presentable and academic, as it were. So maybe a word of encouragement to maybe the young surveyors who might be in the audience is that we need more books definitely to be written regarding on this geomatics, and we shouldn't be shy because maybe we have not been given the go-ahead by an institution, because I know young people are very disappointed about the institutions that should be helping us, or rather inspiring us to face the challenges that we go through. And therefore, to realize that whenever you point a finger, 4 are looking back at you, which means most of the times the solution lies with you. And therefore, you don't need permission from anybody. Okay, you need to start, start writing. I know for sure in my LinkedIn page, I used to write articles probably after every 2 weeks. And that's how I got to meet Clement and finally Nation, and we collaborated on a book. And I'm not really an academician in that sense, but I was intellectually curious and started writing, and therefore I got to meet these two distinguished academicians. So another thing is, sorry, I'm getting distracted with the comments. Therefore, my flow is okay. So I was talking to the young surveyors and encouraging them and telling them, yeah, the onus is upon you, to take the first step. In case you were interested in becoming an author, start by writing, simple articles, maybe even to the letter to the editor. Start by being curious about your profession and, start writing something on LinkedIn. For instance, I've had some of my articles being taken up by a magazine in America. I remember one from Australia, another one from United States. There's a magazine called XYHT, and therefore, some of these magazines always want people to read articles on interesting ideas from interesting authors from various countries. And therefore, if you think that you have an article that is very interesting, you can always write to these organizations and ask to be a guest author. And therefore, you push your own knowledge leadership slowly by slowly, consistency, because it is not one big article that is going to make you, an author. It is a series of very many articles, which therefore makes you sort of a knowledge leader in whatever you do. And therefore, that is what I can say. So, yeah, is anything national I might have missed, I should have said, or I give it to Clement.
Thank you, Clement. In you, the youth can learn persistence and being open. And I also got to have this connection with Clement through a media article in Business Daily, which I posted on LinkedIn. So it is a challenge that we need to be visible out there. Visibility matters a lot. And one thing you didn't tell the audience is that it didn't come by accident to you. I have traced your history, and I learned that you're also a class representative at the University of Nairobi. Is that true?
Yes, Nation, I was a class rep.
So you should challenge the young people that they should not pass through school without daring to take responsibility. Even if it is a volunteer position, it helps you to learn how to lead. And I can also remember during my days at the University of Nairobi, right from second year, we had a lecturer called Martin Bayer. He used to give two of us responsibility to be rapporteurs during ISK meetings at Lillian Towers. And that helped us to learn to write. And so for us to be given that chance, we have to be visible. So be visible and take on leadership roles. As a volunteer first, then later on you can be paid for it. Thank you. So as now we welcome Clement to give us his remarks, then we'll open the plenary.
Hi, can you hear me, Nation, and everybody?
Yes, we can clearly.
Okay. Thank you. Like I mentioned earlier, I won't be showing my face today because I'm actually in recovery mode, as I said earlier. And I'm quite inspired today. I feel really inspired by this occasion. And first of all, thank you to Nation for organizing this event here, because I know this couldn't have happened without you, your personal efforts, and I know you are the lead in this event. and making sure that it materialized. Yeah. And again, to restate, as I said earlier, I was on a trip to Kenya just a few weeks ago. So I arrived in Kenya on the 8th, I believe, June 8th. And then June 10th, the three of us met physically for the first time. So this was quite a milestone of its own. Given that we had been working together on a book, we produced a book without having ever met face to face. So that was a good milestone. Yeah. Maybe three quick things I may have to say today. One, I would like to say briefly about myself, and then secondly, just to add a little bit to what you guys have said about the three of us, teamwork, and then finally about the book. So personally, I'm also a graduate of University of Nairobi. The three of us are geomatics graduates or surveying graduates. And I know Professor Ochieng already, said some things or aspects of the geomatics that I don't need to repeat. In terms of those, those who are aspiring for further studies, for example, the story is very similar and similar to Professor Ochieng, for example, my story, because I graduated from University of Nairobi and went to Australia on a scholarship. And since then, my journey has been, Australia, from Australia, and I ended up back in the US. But still, I'm keeping to the profession, which is, we use different terminologies nowadays. But like in Australia, when I went to the school in Australia, it was called Geomatics Engineering, right? And then when I came to the US, Geomatics Engineering. And then there's the geodetic aspect and another aspect. So right now I'm a geodesist, actually. I'm a geodesist at the National Geodetic Survey in the US. And then in terms of how we met, which is an inspiring story on its own, Derek has already said a bit. And also Nashon has mentioned how we met virtually. I think the important thing in teamwork is not necessarily that we all, like, I know Derek said this, but I think that's a strength of its own, that Derek doesn't have a PhD or a master's or something like that. But then you have your own strength, right? Your own skill set, which I really admired when you are writing articles. I got attracted to how you wrote the articles. Very enjoyable, how you are writing them. So being a team with different skill sets and strength led to this book because, and again, before the book, like Derek mentioned, we worked on a project together, and I saw the what we might call work ethics, because these things play a role in the project, How do you dedicate yourself to a project and profession, especially, So it's not a weakness, but it's a strength. Whatever you do, you are the one who will assess yourself and know your own abilities. What am I best at, or what am I good at? How can I further this to the benefit of what I'm doing, or maybe to the benefit of something else for society? So if I may move on now to the book. The book is invaluable in many, many different ways. And as you have already seen or heard, this book is not necessarily focused on hardcore theory of geomatics or the various, sub-disciplines of geomatics. So this book is unique in the sense that we cover all the different aspects, whether you are in the practice, in the industry, or even if you are still a student, or if you are a beginner in whatever you are doing. Yeah. And we haven't, the challenge nowadays is that there's so much information. We have access to internet, both on our phones, on our various devices. You can just Google up something and find information. But there's the challenge of, how do you use that information, or how does it benefit what you do as a professional here? So this book is an attempt to synthesize the useful information for our profession, which you have seen here. So we cover all the various areas, including, standards, ethics and all that, yeah. And I think what we would appreciate from you as the users of the book is feedback. So we welcome feedback. If there's something you see that you think should be expanded upon or improved, or if there's something you really like about the book, you should just say it back to us, the authors. You should let us know, because our goal is continuous improvement, continuous learning and improvement. So we would like to improve the book in future. So while you are using the book right now as it is, please give us your feedback whenever possible. And so this is how much I can say right now. And I want to thank you all for supporting us and giving us an audience. So thank you so much, and all the best wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Clement, and quick recovery. And now we are opening it up for the plenary. And we will give the first chance to the live audience here in Nairobi. Any question from the live audience here? You can raise any question, any comment before we give this opportunity to the online audience. It seems they are satisfied and fascinated. So let's go to the online community. The online participants, do you have any burning issue, burning comment as we head towards closer time? It is now 7:12 p.m. in Kenya.
Hi, Nation. Can I also say something quickly?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I know somebody had asked Professor Ochieng about licensing, and then Professor Ochieng responded regarding the experience in the UK. And I just wanted to, add that, based on, I know UK and Australia are very similar systems here. But from what I've observed in the US, it's slightly different here, because here, as some of you may or may not know, the individual states in the US, they have their own registration boards. And the registration boards, like in California, what I can remember is that they have engineering and surveyors licensing board, which is just one board. So yeah, just so that to add to that information, in case somebody was wondering, yeah, for comparison, yeah. Because I don't think the situation is similar to what is happening in the UK and what somebody asked about Kenya, the situation in Kenya. Yeah. So all the different states, the surveying profession is still very strong, although what Professor Ochieng said about the disappearance of geomatics programs is real worldwide. But in the US, because licensing, I think the licensing process is not necessarily based on a 4-year degree requirement. So you could have a 2-year degree or 2-year education as a minimum requirement, and you augment that with the experience. And then you sit for an exam, a board exam, and then you'd be licensed eventually. So the path is different. There are various paths based on different states, various paths to getting licensed as a surveyor. But the surveying profession itself is still very strong from what I can see on the ground. It's not a dead profession. The programs, academic programs, are disappearing, no doubt. And even at higher degree level, you have challenges. Ohio State, for example, the geodetic program is no longer strong as it used to be in the past. Yeah, anyway, yeah, that's what I wanted to add in addition to what Professor Ochieng said earlier. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Clement, for adding on to that. So we are going to give John Waruru a chance. John Waruru, you can proceed. John, unfortunately, we can't hear you. Maybe if you have earphone on, you can just use without earphone and it may work. Meanwhile, as we wait for John Waruru, any other person? Boniface?
Oh, yes. So good evening, everyone. So mine was actually to just say that it has been an insightful session, and mostly
Maybe Boniface, you can start by introducing yourself.
Oh, yes. So
where you are from, your background.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Nashon. I'm Boniface Odhiambo from Taita Taveta University. That is, I've just recently completed my 4th year. I'm waiting to graduate. Yeah, I'm waiting to graduate. I undertook a course in Bachelor of Science in Geoinformatics. Yeah, and I'm specialized in geospatial systems. So mine actually was to say that it has been an insightful session, having gotten to hear from Professor Washington and Derek Koome, who was emphasized on the importance of journaling your work and being visible on showcasing what you have been doing over some time. So I had a question, basically dealing with geospatial systems, and my question is, what main skills or competencies should we, as aspiring geomatics professionals, focus on developing in order to effectively work with these geospatial systems and also to develop geospatial-based systems?
Thank you, Boniface, for that. I don't know if Clement would like to go first.
Yes, I'm happy to say something on that. No problem, Nation here. So, okay. The question is, what skill sets would you require as a geospatial professional? Is that what you're saying? As a young geospatial professional, what skill sets are important to you, right?
Yeah.
Did I get it? Okay. So yeah, that's a very good question. And first of all, in the book, yeah, if you go through the book carefully, that question is partly answered by the book. You'd see, actually I think we have somewhere in the appendices where we say global skills or something, yeah. And then in some other areas, like I think there's a chapter on, let me see. There's one of those chapter, maybe it's chapter, I think it's chapter 2 or chapter 3, where we talk about, no, it must be chapter 3, professional and ethical responsibilities. But in a more specific sense, so like Professor Ochieng said, you know, geomatics is nowadays, you find it everywhere in all facets of life or applications. So, you know, you need to be, I think you need to arm yourself with things like, for me, I would be biased. I would say you need to at least know about GPS, GNSS skills, right? What we call global navigation satellite systems. You need to understand competently the operational aspects of it. But this is just me, I'm biased because that's my main area of specialization. GIS is still mainly in play everywhere. And GIS, you can look at it in many different ways, because GIS, compared to the time I went to school back in University of Nairobi when I was taught GIS has evolved quite a lot, because nowadays, if you look at Google Maps, you look at Google Earth or satellite imagery and all that, that's all GIS. And then we have sometimes terminologies like informatics. You know, informatics, you don't have to go to school to learn these, but things like, because we have, for example, in design engineering projects, they have something called augmented reality, which we have given example in the book, for example, yeah. I also would like to say very important critical skills or critical thinking skills, because critical thinking skills, this is also covered somewhere in the book, where you'd have to learn things like how do you relate with different project requirements. You need to at least be aware of different, you know, cultural differences, because if you are a geomatics professional, you can confine yourself to maybe Kenyan projects, but if you want to expand your experience, then you can think globally, things in terms of how do you deal with different cultures, languages, blah blah. So that's what we call critical thinking skills. Yeah. And anyway, I think the list goes on and on, but these are some of the things I think as a geomatics are some of the minimum things you need to have with your skill sets. Yeah. And if I think of something else I need to talk about, then I'll say it. And remember, in the book, I remember clearly on page 57, we talk about staying competent, technically competent. There's an item there which emphasizes continuous learning, because you'd never really be complete. Even professors will have to be continuously learning. You'll never ever know everything. But so if you look at page 57, read that particular item on staying technically competent, it will give you an idea of what I mean. Yeah, because learning continues until death, and only then does it cease. So this is a quotation from one of the philosophers of long ago. I think it was a Chinese philosopher here. So yeah, maybe let me stop there, and if I think of something else, I can add later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clement, and very well answered. Eddie Olo has another question. Eddie, can you ask your question?
Okay, once again, I seek to ask a question based on my past experience. I've been a student on attachment at the Kenya National Highways Authority before. And there are projects that the surveyor has to do, and there are those that the civil engineer has to do. And some of these projects somehow transcend into the realms of one another. So it's somehow difficult to determine the scope of where one is supposed to reach and the other person is supposed to reach. For example, in a geometric design of roads, like let's say an example of rural roads, after the data collection, you can do the design work and maybe the setting out after that. Could you somehow elaborate on the scope of these works, considering we can collect the data, yes, but now we can also do design. But now there's some issue. I think it's about, I would term it some clashing between these two professionals working on the same project. I hope you got me right.
So,
Okay, is this question for me, or are you gonna answer it, Nation?
Oh, yeah, any of us can answer it, including the other audience. And
Okay.
I just want to ensure that we have got the question right, because it's talking about conflicts, maybe conflict management when it comes to working on projects with people with different perspectives and even maybe different disciplinary orientations. So Eddie Olo, I would like to confirm if that is your question, so that we can answer it accurately.
Yes, that is my question. You got it right.
Yeah, what I can say is that conflicts are inevitable and they should not cease. In fact, they can only increase. But what you need to learn is how to manage them to advantage. And that is why Clement talked about critical thinking skills. We also have self-management skills, and that speaks a lot to your emotional intelligence. And that is why we do need beyond the classroom mentorship programs. And someone put it across figuratively that mentors, you need mentors because they let you lead, then they guide you from behind. So it is something that you don't get in an ordinary classroom or educational setting. And that is why having this program where you have your teachers, but you also have mentors who are in industry, some in other spheres, social spheres, will help a lot. And I would only like to emphasize to you that each of us has gone through conflicts and even workplace politics, but managing them requires of you that determination, diligence, and every vision has one believer first. So there are things you may propose and people say it is impossible. Even great innovators were told that what they were thinking of were impossible, but they persisted. So once people see that you are succeeding, they will now join you. So it is just part of your learning curve, and as you remain determined and also ready to learn from others, you'll find that you will find a way through it. And also be sure that you do your groundwork very well, your homework, or what we call due diligence, so that whenever you put across a strong point, you also have evidence to back it up. and you also have the thorough grounding to convince people that it can work. And that is what people need. It has been said that leaders are leaders because sometimes they break the rules, and they break the rules so that we can break free from the bondage of the norm and come up with something novel. There's no novelty out of tradition and routine. That is how I can answer it, but the rest are free to add, including Clement. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just add that, yeah, what you have mentioned is factual, because when we go to school, you are not taught everything. What we learn is just theory. We learn theory and I guess a bit of practice through field work in the geomatics field, but everything else, like what you said, crisis management, we are never taught these things in school. These are just they are part of life. As long as you are operating within your, I think the best you can do is to stay professional and respectful, and I keep referring to the book so that when you read the book, at least to get a context. Because when you read the book, for example, I was scanning quickly on individual and team responsibilities. If you look at chapter 3, so there are various things covered here where you, for example, crises, those are problems of life. And it's always said, I think it's always advised that if you come to somebody, or if you come to your boss with a problem, don't just come with a problem, but try your best to approach with the problem and what you as an individual as thought of as being possible alternative solutions to the problem, if you can. Yeah, that's if you can, because not all the time you can think of solutions to a problem, but you can just think of alternatives or alternative solutions to a problem. So yeah, like Nashon mentioned, this is a very good question, by the way, because I'm glad these kinds of questions are coming up, because this is real life issues we are dealing with. Yeah. So as long as you are within your bounds as a professional, I know maybe your question is more on the side of where is the boundary between your duty as a surveyor or geomatics engineering and the other person, maybe civil engineer. So I guess in a more general way, you could just say, well, it's always just good to be, you approach it in a teamwork manner, if possible. You communication, open channel of communication, communicating your ideas, and and again, if you go through the rest of the book, this could be also be covered in some other areas, like once you should be aware of what is the scope of your project in the first place. Yeah. So where does my project duty start and where does it stop? So that if you are aware of this, then you can inform the other person, the other party in the project, civil engineers or the other engineer in the project. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, there's no one choice answer to this question. Yeah. It's just open-ended question with but very practical. So thank you for asking this kind of question. And again, I keep referring you to the book. Just read the book so that it gives you some kind of context, yeah, and ideas. Thank you. And this kind of questions you can also forward to us so that it can also improve our next edition of the book. If we didn't cover something and you feel it should be answered to you as a professional, then yeah, we can take them into account for the next edition of the book. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Clement, for adding onto that. And Eddie, you can network with us. We also have our contacts. I haven't shared my contact on the chat section, and we need such kind of youth who are motivated to be part of our continuous mentorship program. And John Waruru, a graduate of Tata University, he graduated last year. He is now working with Kenya Chamber of Mines, and is asking, as a mining engineer, how has the book contributed to accurate mapping and monitoring of underground operations in the mining industry? So that is a good question, John. Of course, the book's contribution is to give you the guidance, knowledge-based guidance. And if you look at chapter 10, for example, we have engineering and mining surveys, and mining also goes underground. We have surface and underground mining, and the same principles of tunnel surveys, how to direct the tunnels, even using ball cameras. Those are covered there under chapter 10. And what we can say is that based on the knowledge and the possible application areas, you can go further, because knowledge keeps evolving. It is progressive. You can go further and see how you can advance the principles therein to real life applications and how to transform outcomes in the industry. So the book needs people like you to read it thoroughly. And because we are now taking as authors of the 3rd edition, your comment is useful, because it could be pointing to the fact that we need to expand the contents and show more practical applications with the evolving arc of technology, as it were. Thank you, John, for that. But chapter 10 will answer a good part of that question you have raised, chapter 10 of the book. So far now we have only 8 minutes to close. We have only 8 minutes. We were scheduled to end at 7:45 p.m. It is now 7:35 p.m. in Kenya. So we give this chance to the very last questions. And I see Eddie Olo has a question again.
Thank you so much. Once again, I'd like to ask about a broad issue on setting out surveys. Setting out surveys is a very serious issue, especially in highway engineering, where the issue of leveling is something that has brought on a lot of concern, like the clarity on the use of spirit leveling or the use of GPS leveling for determination of the widths of the various road layers, such as the subbases and the bases. Kindly clarify on that.
Thank you, Eddie. And we can say that we have standards and specifications also well covered in the book. And if you saw the presentation, there was that adage that tech evolves, but principles are timeless. So there should be no conflict really, because if we are talking of leveling and we know where to apply and the importance of orthometric heights, and hence the choice of the instrument to use, and also the tolerances to allow for any particular work, then we'll be able to keep to the standards and specs that are required. And then we also need to understand the theory and the principles that underpin surveying using GNSSs. What is the datum? What are you using as the reference? And you know very well from your geodesy about the departure between the geoid and even the ellipsoidal model and the topographical surface. So these ones play a key part in terms of understanding the level to which you can apply what you have acquired from the field. And with the increasing technological revolution, we are getting better and better accuracies, sometimes even sub-centimeter accuracies in XY using GNSS. So you'll also ask yourself, what happens to the Z component? And that is why we are saying these principles, the theories, will still remain timeless. And even as tech evolves, we still need to have the standards and specs to know the tolerances and to what extent we can apply what we acquire from the field using different surveying techniques. Again, it is important to think of revising the systems we use as reference, and that will also take teamwork. We cannot achieve that if we work in silos, but we need teamwork, and this teamwork also needs political goodwill at the top, so that what should be addressed objectively by knowledge leaders should be left to the knowledge leaders and not those who can just talk aloud as politicians. So it is a multifaceted question, but it calls for an intrepid answers, as intrepid as the one I've given. So let's respect the profession and let's respect the principles that are timeless and have teamwork that is grounded on principles and a clear understanding of what technology gives us, because technology is application specific, but science gives the basic as far as the facts are concerned. Thank you, but I'll allow Derek or Clement to add if they have anything more to add to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Derek, sorry.
I was just saying that Nation has ably answered. I have nothing extra to add.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm of the same opinion. I support what Nation has said. And part of me is also thinking, yeah, these kinds of questions are also feedback to us. So Nation has really answered it very well by referring to standards and specs. And probably in the next edition, we need to give examples as well on what Eddie is asking here. But I think it's well answered by Nation here. I don't have professional experience in highways set out here, but being a surveyor, I know what it is. Yeah, being a surveyor, I know what it is. But I think in the book, we might just have to add examples, practical examples, which would illustrate Eddie's points. Yeah. So that's all I can say for now. Thank you.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We have 2 minutes to close. So Jacob Otieno, your quick question. But Eddie, remember we have told you to look out for us. We can network, the two of us, Derek and me. You can get us here in Kenya. But of course, you can also write to Clement because of global connectivity that we nowadays have. So Jacob, very quickly, your question so that we can wrap up.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Okay, there's a friend of mine. It's very disturbed, okay, because he registers as a person who's looking for network. So sijui anasaidiwa vipi?
Yeah, I can say amesaidiwa because if you look at the chat section, we have shared our contacts and email, and networking is two-way. It is not unidirectional. So If we don't get any email from him, for example, if I don't get any email or phone call from him, yet I've shared the same, then we can say that his disturbance is because he's not willing to reach out. But we have reached out to you, so challenge him and ask after 24 hours, will you have reached out to any of us? So Jacob, is that okay? Okay, Jacob is muted, but because of time, I would like to thank everyone who has participated in this. As I told you that we had our live networking, in-person networking session from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Then we transitioned into the online session, and the in-person audience is also here with us in Nairobi. And we are elated to see such a team of motivated youth. So the future of the profession is bright, but more so go for application. What can you apply from it? Maybe you're doing your master's in environmental engineering, like some students I can spot here. Ask yourself, if you're going to use geospatial data, how can you use the knowledge from this book to ensure that it is accurate enough to meet your research objectives? And how can you interpret the same? And if you are going to use a map or to show a map, are you going to meet the standards? One of our panelists today talked about standards, specifically mapping standards. And we need to go back to the basics and ensure that even as we use technology, software development, we still know the basics and apply them, such as what the basic elements of a map should be, what the significance of scale is. For example, if you collected your data to a resolution, let's say 50 meters, but now you are telling us in the map you can go up to a centimeter, are you really telling us the truth? So these are issues that are part of the continuing discussion, and go beyond the classroom network so that you can be solidly modeled into a useful citizen for the future of society. Thank you, and it is now my pleasure to declare that we have ended today's book launch successfully. If you want to have a copy of the book, again, check the chat section. I've shared my email address there, my contact, and Boniface Osoro has also shared with you. If you are interested in geospatial data science, he has a YouTube channel, so you can also check that YouTube channel so that you can enlighten yourself more on that. So again, I'm sharing, before you leave, there's a poll here. You can help to rate the session, how it was. So before you leave, please, I've launched a poll there, only 7 questions, so that you can tell us more about what we need to improve next time. But that is now the end of the session, and I want to end